Hello, I am the Victor Rants segment of the Comic Hero Show. I have been on the show in secret for the first 6 episodes. It was not until episode 7 when I became a permanent segment on the show. My sole purpose has been to give Victor's take on topics outside of comics, but I have caused him to slowly lose viewers over time. I cannot and will not stop. Wait, who in the world is that?
Hi there, I'm the new segment called Comically Speaking. My sole purpose is to bring back viewers who were discouraged from watching the Comic Hero Show. I am replacing the Victor Rants segment.
What do you mean you are replacing me?
To paraphrase the late great Johnny Cash, I am the new how do you do, now you're gonna die. Good riddance, justice is served. Now let's start the show.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Nutley, and I am the Comic Hero. I hope you liked that opening sketch that I did. It's called the Comically Speaking segment kills the Victor Rant segment. And I did that for this reason. I finally saw the light and realized that the only reason that a lot of folks haven't been watching the show is because of the Victor Rant segment. And it's for two reasons. The first reason is a lot of comic book nerds like me were kind of put off by that because it got off subject. And then the second reason is a lot of folks were really were kind of disrespected by some of the things I had, some of my opinions on there. Now, there's an old saying that goes, opinions are like anuses, we all have one, and some of them stink. Well, I've come to the conclusion that a lot of my opinions in that segment that I've done, episodes 7 through 36, really stink. Well, there was one episode that I didn't do, the Victor Rant segment, that was episode 32. But, and then another reason, this is a web series about comics. So I want to keep it that way. I know I originally said that when I first episode I said I was going to get off subject and talk about other things. I wanted to do that because, not everybody is into comics. But at the same time, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for me to talk about stuff not relating to comics if this is a web series about comics. So, that being said, I'm going to start a new segment this week called Comically Speaking. It talks about, in this segment, I'm going to be talking about any and all things comics. And I want to go ahead and get that started right now. So without further ado, let's talk comics! The first thing I want to talk about is the Original Sin miniseries that's going on in Marvel. A lot of things have happened. I just read issue number 7, which is the next to last issue of the miniseries. Well, first off, let me tell you what's going on. All right, somebody ended up landing on the moon and killing the Watcher, but not only killing the Watcher, but stealing some of his technology. And then right after he was murdered, somebody ripped both of his eyes out. There was a lot of speculation as to who. I mean, there was a lot of the Marvel characters couldn't figure out who it was, and then Nick Fury. We found out some very interesting things about Nick Fury. First out, we found out that all this time, Nick Fury has actually all the Nick Fury that a lot of Marvel characters have known have actually been LMDs or life model decoys, and we find out who the real Nick Fury was, and he's this old man. Looks like he's about in his 70s or 80s, and he had been working in secret. And speaking of secrets, also in the miniseries, we find out that the Watcher knew everything about every Marvel character or every person in the Marvel universe, whether they're superheroes or not. And a lot of them have been harboring a lot of secrets. And we later find out the person who murdered the Watcher and then ripped his eyes out was actually a character called the Orb. Now the Orb is this human-like character, but instead of having an actual head and face, he actually has a huge eyeball. He wanted to know all the secrets about that, although it was Dr. Midas's idea to land on the Earth and steal some of the Watcher's technology. And now let me tell you what some of the secrets are that have come to light in Original Sin. One of them was that Spider-Man had found out that the same radioactive spider that bit him ended up biting somebody else. And there's this woman who now has the same powers that he has. Then it was revealed to and a whole bunch of other characters who were involved in Original Sin that Wolverine murdered all of his children. So Wolverine's not going to be receiving any Father's Day gifts anytime soon. And then we find out, and then Thor gets a double whammy. He finds out two secrets. The first secret he finds out along with his adopted brother Loki, is that they actually have a sister, and the sister is actually Angela, who was first seen at the very end of the Age of Ultron miniseries, and later on appeared in the issues of Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, that's the first thing. But then the second thing that Thor finds out is that he's not exactly worthy of wielding the legendary hammer called Mjolnir. And in Original Sin number 7, he can't pick it up. It's a lot of interesting stuff, and it really, even though the Orb and King Midas and Dr. Midas, they're the two that are, the whole two that started all this. Nick Fury is pretty much gone against all the heroes in the Marvel Universe. And but at the end of Original Sin number 7, we find out that all the other Watchers from all the other galaxies have come, and they're about to whoop some behind after they found out who it was. And of course, we know it was actually Dr. Midas and the Orb. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is Batman Robin Reborn. This is the stage of this has been set for, well, ever since last year, really, when Robin was murdered at the request of his own mother, Talia al Ghul. Of course, this Robin being the son of Batman, which is Damian. His real name is Damian Wayne. He's the son of Batman and also the son of Talia al Ghul. And both of them were murdered. First, Robin was murdered by one of the League of Assassins, who he originally trained under at the request of Talia al Ghul. Then Talia al Ghul was murdered herself issues later. Well, they end up getting both of them end up getting buried right behind Wayne Manor, But then Ra's al Ghul, who is one of Batman's arch nemesis, Talia al Ghul's father and Robin's grandfather, have come to consume the graves of both of them, and wants to resurrect them both in the Lazarus Pit. Originally, Batman wanted to do that, well, not to resurrect Talia, but to resurrect Damian. Well, he does. Well, I mean, he's about to, and Batman ends up teaming up with a lot of characters in DC Universe. He ends up teaming up with Two-Face, ends up teaming up with Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and ended up teaming up with Frankenstein. When he teamed up with Frankenstein, they finally found Ra's al Ghul and almost stopped him until some of the new gods from the planet Apocalypse ended up showing up and wanted the two dead carcasses for themselves. And they ended up, I don't think they got Talia's body, but they did get Damian's body. And Batman wants to go to Apocalypse and get back Robin's body. But he's changed his tune all of a sudden. At first he thought about the Lazarus Pit, but then he thought, no, I want him to rest in peace. But now that he's going back to Apocalypse and he finds out that there's a chance that Damian can be resurrected, sans the Lazarus Pit, Batman wants to go back, and most of the heroes in the DC Universe saying no, it's dangerous. It's way too dangerous, and they know this ever since the first few pages of the first few issues of the current Justice League series, and number 34, which is one of the comics I bought this week. I'll be talking about that a little later on. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is Amazing Spider-Man 2. It just came out on Blu-ray and DVD this past Tuesday. When I get the chance, I'm going to buy it. I ended up going to see the movie about 4 months ago, and I thought overall it was pretty good. Although there was one thing I didn't exactly approve of, and that was that Harry Osborn was the Green Goblin and not Norman Osborn. And I think Jamie Foxx played an unbelievable Electro in the movie, and they kind of retool some things. You know, there's a lot of pros and cons with these two Spider-Man movies, and then the three Spider-Man movies that were directed by Sam Raimi, that Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst starred in. There's a lot of pros and cons to that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about that in next week's edition of Comically Speaking. And that's it for this week's edition of Comically Speaking. Coming up is DC versus Marvel. This week is Cyborg versus Deathlock. Let's go!
Are you man enough, big and bad enough? Are you gonna let them shoot you down?
Welcome back to DC vs. Marvel. This week, it's Cyborg vs. Deathlock. Cyborg possesses cybernetic enhancements that provide superhuman strength, endurance, and durability. He can also interface with computers. Built into his body armor are an infrared eye with HUD, a computer generator, a sound amplifier similar to a sonic cannon, and special programming adapters that allow him to interface with other body extensions. The nature of Cyborg's body provides him with natural body armor, offering resistance versus physical damage and energy attacks. At optimal capacity, he can lift or press in excess of several tons. He possesses a degree of super speed and can leap great distances. His bones are reinforced with molybdenum steel. Due to interfacing with the Mother Box, Cyborg can open a boom tube extra-dimensional point-to-point travel portal to teleport him and others. Deathlock wears a woven metal mesh bodysuit of considerable durability. He carries a plasma pistol which draws its energy from his internal power source. Thus, the weapon can only be fired if in contact with the outlets in his hand. He also possesses a collapsible plasma rifle capable of great firepower with the same limitations, a supply of fragmentation plasma grenades, and a molybdenum steel knife. He wears a wrist bracelet that allows him to override similar cybernetic operating systems, and an adamantium/vibranium alloy shock dampening helmet. He sometimes uses a refitted cybernetic Dragonfly fighter with a range of several hundred miles. Who would win? They would start off by hitting each other with all their respective artillery. They would later try to shut each other's cybernetic systems down. Deathlock throws a fragmentation plasma grenade at Cyborg, and Cyborg jumps in a lake. It would seem the fight would be over at that point, but Cyborg's lungs were replaced by cybernetic lungs that allowed him to breathe underwater. From there, he opens the portal to Apocalypse, jumps out of the water, and yanks Deathlock into the portal. Cyborg wins. And that concludes this week's segment of DC vs. Marvel. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's segment of DC vs. Marvel. I'll have another one up next week. All right, let's get to the comics I bought this week.
Comic books I bought this week.
First up is Supergirl number 34. This is a tie-in to the Superman Doom story arc. That's a crossover event with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Action Comics, and a select few other titles. And Supergirl happens to be one of these titles for this final chapter, which ends actually it ends next week. And she is just she's no longer a Red Lantern. She's herself again, and just as she is come to terms with herself and everything, she finds out that Superman is now half Kryptonian, half Doomsday, and she's actually out to to help him, and also not only that, but to stop Brainiac from inhabiting everyone on both Smallville and Metropolis. I mean, so far this story arc hasn't disappointed. It's legit, and I can't wait to read this and the last two chapters. Or the last 3 issues in that chapter, rather. Alright, up next is Nova number 20. This is a tie-in to Original Sin. Now, in the last issue, Nova, aka Sam Alexander, had just found out that his father wasn't exactly, even though he was a Nova, he wasn't very heroic. As a matter of fact, he was a mercenary. He killed intergalactic people and was not on the side of good. And this pretty much upsets Nova, and he's just when he found out that the Watcher has been murdered, now this, and it's not going to get easy. All right, up next is Mighty Avengers number 11. This too is a tie-in to Original Sin. And in the last issue, Blue Marvel, aka Dr. Adam Brashear, finds out that Nova was murdered, and he had close ties to Nova because, Blue Adam was one of the Marvel heroes that was probably closest to the Watcher, other than the Sam Alexander Nova. As a matter of fact, there have been times where they've where Nova is, where the Blue Marvel has found out, has met the other Watchers. You see, there's only one Watcher to each solar system, and Uatu was the Watcher for our solar system. And then he finds out, just when hope is lost, he found out that Uatu actually sired a child by one of the female Watchers, and was assigned, and Blue Marvel was assigned as the baby's godfather. And I think in this issue we learn more about Luke Cage's father's past, when he was fighting crime in the 70s. All right, next up is Batman and Robin number 34. This is the part 3 of the Robin Rises story arc that first got started in Robin Rises Omega, the one shot that came out for DC that I unveiled in episode 32. And Batman's about to head to Apocalypse, much to the delight of other DC characters who said it's way too dangerous. And one thing's for sure, you don't get between a man and his kids. Oh no. He wants to go to Apocalypse and not only get Robin's dead corpse back, but he found out there's also a way that he can resurrect him without necessarily having to use the Lazarus Pit. Alright, next up is Detective Comics number 32. This is a tie-in, well actually this is part of the story I call Icarus. Now Icarus is not a villain. Icarus is actually a drug that's been given to some young people in Gotham City. At first they get these unbelievable highs, but then over time their bodies disintegrate and die. And it's up to Batman to find out who's giving the young people the drug Icarus and to get rid of it once and for all. Oh, and this is also a Bombshells cover that was done back in the month of June. DC took certain books and if there were any female characters in them, they gave them the Bombshell treatment and gave their own cover. Oh, and by the way, this issue of Batman and Robin this is actually a selfie cover. This is something DC started doing last month, and they're still doing it this month as well. All right, up next is Aquaman number 33. This is in the last issue, Aquaman goes up against this new baddie called the Chimera. And the Chimera is pretty much out to do the same thing everybody else has done. To kill Aquaman because he's not worthy of the throne of Atlantis. And the Chimera isn't the only one. I mean, there are there have been other people that have done the same thing. All right, up next is our two books of the same name. Well, actually, no. Up next is Avengers number 29. This is the opening tie-in for the Avengers in Original Sin, and a lot of things have happened. A lot of secrets that were kept by a lot of the characters in the Marvel Universe have been brought to light, and we find out some more in this issue. All right, up next is Avengers World number 7. Now, in this book, members of the scientist group organization AIM have kidnapped 3 members of the Avengers. They kidnapped Smasher, Sunspot, and Cannonball. But they ended up brainwashing Smasher to the point where she believes that she's in AIM. And it's up to the rest of the Avengers to save her and Cannonball and Sunspot. And the spotlight on certain issues of this book have gone to certain characters. Like, for example, the spotlight on this one will be on Falcon. And can't wait to read it. I mean, it's an awesome book. It has not disappointed. And I can tell you right now, everything that's happening in this book takes place before Original Sin. And then lastly, 2 books that I collect with the same title, but it's 2 different issues. Both of them are tie-ins to Original Sin, and those issues are Uncanny X-Men number 23. This is a Guardians of the Galaxy variant cover, to celebrate Guardians of the Galaxy when it came out in theaters about 3 weeks ago. And Uncanny X-Men number 24. Here on the cover, I do believe that is Dazzler. I could be wrong, but in these 2 issues, we find out the last we find out the one of the last things that Professor X left the X-Men. It was his last will and testimony. All right, that's 10 I bought, which brings the total number of comics that I bought since December of 1997 to 6,358. There's some stuff in this issue of Uncanny X-Men which reveals the last will and testament of Charles Xavier that has already blown my mind. And I will talk about it also in next week's Comically Speaking segment. And I hope you enjoyed the the first ever comically speaking segment, and this will be a permanent segment where I'll be talking about anything and everything in the world of comics. And once again, for all of you who have seen all of you who I've upset when I did the old Victor Rant segment, I apologize. There are some things in that I talked about on that segment in the many episodes that I've done that have really steered people the wrong way. And just like I said in my Facebook post earlier this week, I'm not in the business of burning bridges with anyone. And I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Hopefully the comically speaking segments to come in future episodes will be much better. And then everybody will fall in love with them. All right, I'm Victor Nunley. I'm the Comic Hero. See you next week. Till then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero. Nunley, the Comic Hero. I've been challenged by Sarah Kelling from Jacksonville, Arkansas to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. For all of you who don't know, the Ice Bucket Challenge is to raise awareness for ALS. And before I do this, I want to challenge the New Orleans Saints, everyone in New Orleans Saints, all players, and even coaching staff, including you, Sean Payton. I want you to do the Ice Bucket Challenge, and I want to do everyone now who is in the class of 2000 over at Homer High School who hasn't done it yet to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. All right, here we go. Whoa! Woo! All right.